Let me give you a very quick background. I attended Vanderbilt University on a partial soccer scholarship in 2003. 3 years later, they cut our program. I'd had a very unimpressive resume up until that point, and I decided that it would be in my best interest to go ahead and graduate, hang up my cleats, be done with soccer. My parents had spent quite a bit of money, on my scholarship, or paying for the rest of my scholarship, and so I decided that was it for me. 8 months later, I try out for the Vanderbilt club team for soccer, and they said, you know what, thanks for coming out, but we don't really need you. It's like, all right, that's cool. 3 months after that, I get a phone call from Duke University, and Duke says, hey, are you interested in coming to play soccer here and working on your master's? I was like, of course I'm interested. They were going to be the #1 team in the country the following year. But is Duke interested in me? Well, sure enough, by the grace of God, and I don't think this has ever happened before in the history of sports as far as I'm aware, I got a full-ride athletic scholarship to play soccer on the #1 team in the country with an unimpressive resume based off of word of mouth alone. But then I get to Duke, and that's whenever the real fun began. Because 1 month into the season, I found myself the very last pick on the team. We'd play pickup games, and basically they said, you're the worst of the worst. Great lot of good a full-ride scholarship does for you. So at this same time, I'm taking a sports psychology class with a guy by the name of Greg Dale. And Greg Dale says some things that to me just make me want to bolt out of the classroom and be like, look, dude, you don't know anything about sports. You're 5'7", you're kind of small, you're like 50 years old. What do you know about sports? He said to us, I think that sports are over 70% mental. And that's when I really wanted to pull my hair out. Because if sports were really 70% mental, then why had I spent my entire life training physically? Nobody had ever taught me how to train mentally. But he caught me at a good time. Couldn't really go any lower than the last pick on the team. I could only go up from there. So I said, you know what? I'm going to attempt to do what you teach. And in 2 months, I went from being the last pick on that team to finishing second in points to the very best player in the country on that team. There were 15 future pros. I was the first person on that team to be the ACC Player of the Week. What I got was instant results. So what I implore you all today is to open up your hearts. But today, what I'm going to talk to you about has very little to do with head knowledge, and it has everything to do with heart's beliefs. So I really ask you guys to open up your hearts today and be receptive to what I'm going to talk about. And if you do that, I've had the privilege of working with top performers in most fields, all the way down to kids in the projects. And seeing the results in their life is just, it's inspiring. So that's what I ask from you today, is to open up your hearts for us. So, to get this started, let me ask you a question. How many of you spend time worrying every single week? Cool. So, when I was at Duke, I got to study under a guy by the name of David Rubin. David Rubin is the #2 person in the world on autobiographical memory. And what I learned in that class is that our brains have great difficulty distinguishing between what's real and imagined. How many of you have ever had a dream that was so vivid and so real that you woke up and you could have sworn that you had actually experienced it? I had one last night. Okay? Whenever we vividly imagine something, we actually engage the exact same part of our brain as when we're actually doing that activity. So whenever you practice something in your mind, you're creating the exact same neurological pathways that you do whenever you perform that activity in real life. So, one simple thing that you can do to improve the people's quality of life around you is, rather than talking about problems and everything that went wrong in somebody's day, just simply asking them the question, hey man, what went well in your day today? Hey sis, what was the best part about your week? and getting them to talk about those things, because whenever you talk about it and whenever you relive it, you're actually re-experiencing it. So there was a study that was done on collegiate golfers. They took 30 college golfers out to Colorado, and they split them up into 3 groups of 10. The first group positively visualized before every single putt. So they would close their eyes and they would see themselves putting the ball into the hole. The second group negatively visualized. Before every putt, they would close their eyes and they would see the ball just missing or stopping short of the hole. The last group just did physical practice. Here were the results. Group 1 that positively visualized in 1 week got better by 30%. The group that just did physical practice, they got better by 12%. What do you think happened to the group that did negative visualization? I think I heard you guys say that they got worse. You think that you can do physical practice and get worse at something. Yep. So here's the scary part. Worrying equals negative visualization. Let that sink in. For me personally, whenever I learned about visualization, Greg Dale thought he could pull a fast one, and he said, "You can use it to get better at something." I was like, haha, that's why I physically practice. Thanks. How am I going to know if I got better because of visualization or because of my physical practice? I said, here's what I'll do. I'll start visualizing myself scoring a goal with my head. I'm 6'2". I'm a big soccer player. I had never scored a goal with my head in my life. So I said, if this works, scoring a goal with my head, then I'll believe you. I thought that I had, created the impossible scenario. This was before there were cool things like the app that I've created, a sports psychology app for soccer with guided imagery. I just had a very rudimentary chance of, I'm just going to try and see myself scoring a goal with my head after never doing it. 2 weeks later, I'm playing against Boston College, who's one of the best teams in the country, and I scored a goal that was so beautiful that if SportsCenter covered college soccer, it would have been on top 10. The very next game, I scored another goal with my head that's the ugliest goal I've ever scored in my life. But I scored 2 goals 3 weeks after visualizing. Okay? It's one of the most powerful things that you can do. How many of you think that pressure is real? It's real? Well, in what quadrant do you think that you're thinking in whenever you feel pressure? The past, the present, or the future? Say them out loud. Okay. Where you're going to feel it is in the past, because humans have what we like to call a negativity bias. So when you think to the past, you remember all the things that you messed up, all the things that went poorly. Think about them way more than you think about things that went well. And then whenever you think back to the past, you go, oh no, what if I do that in the future? What are my parents going to think if I get a C on this test or a C in this class? What job am I going to get? What are my friends going to think? The one quadrant that most people skip is the present. Because in the present moment, there is no such thing as pressure. And if you feel pressure, it's probably because you've stopped breathing. Because your muscles, your brain, it needs oxygen. Without oxygen, you can't live. Without oxygen, your muscles can't move and operate. Your brain definitely can't operate. So, most people spend their lives bouncing around from the past to the future, skipping the present moment, skipping everything that's happening right in front of them. How effective would it be if you tried to drive your car looking in the rearview mirror? I wouldn't want to be on the road with you, I know that. So how many of you talk to yourself? Probably talking to yourself right now. I have thoughts that go through my head. You have thoughts that go through your head. Doesn't have to be audible. We all talk to ourselves all day long. So indulge me. Let's do a simple little exercise, and you guys are kind of far away and it's dark, so I can't tell if you close your eyes or not. But close your eyes and remember the last big mistake that you made. And whenever you remember that mistake, go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, now that you remember that mistake, I want you to remember what you said to yourself. Raise your hand when you remember what you said to yourself after that mistake. Okay, open your eyes. How many of you said some really hurtful things to yourself? Okay. How many of you wouldn't hang out with somebody for very long who talked to you the way you talk to yourself? Raise your hand. Okay. So, who is sitting next to one of their close friends and they said something very horrible to themselves? My name is Joshua. What's your name? Laura. What's your name? Okay, would you do me a favor, stand up real quick. Who thinks they said something that was way more hurtful to the other person? Okay, I'll just pick you. I want you to look at her, look her in the eyes. Here, turn, face each other. Now with the same effort, the same intensity, and the same enthusiasm that you beat yourself up after this last mistake, I want you to try and say it to her.
You're an idiot. How could you have done that?
Was that hard to do?
Yeah, it was.
Why was it hard to do?
Because I don't want to hurt her feelings.
Oh, thank you guys. She didn't want to hurt her feelings. But we have no problem doing that to ourselves. We have no problem beating ourselves up. And we can get in the ring with ourselves and just really quickly just unleash a whole bunch of blows. Here's why that's detrimental. The words that we use put pictures into our mind. This morning I woke up and I looked at a beautiful sunset. It inspired me. Have you ever looked at a sad picture? How did that make you feel? Have you ever looked at an inspiring picture? How did it make you feel? So the words that we use put pictures in our mind. The pictures in our mind impact how we feel. We already talked about how we feel impacts what we do. What we habitually do equals what? How about your destiny? Where did it all start? With words. Whoever said, "Sticks and stones can break my bones, but words will never hurt me," I think they got it backwards. So the question you have to ask yourself today, how have I been wielding my power? Both to other people, but also to myself. So, there are two techniques that you can use whenever you make a mistake that are much more beneficial. The first one, Greg Dale taught me, it's flush it down the toilet. So you close your eyes, you vividly imagine that mistake as a piece of toilet paper in your hand, you crumple it up, you throw it in the toilet, and you flush it, and you see it disappear. It's the first one. Lou Tice, the founder of the Pacific Institute, he came up with this next one. Whenever you make a mistake, you say, "That's not like me. I do A, B, or C." What I did on the soccer field was whenever I would make a mistake, I would say, the next opportunity I get, I'm going to create a goal. The next opportunity I get, I'm going to score a goal. And then I started to realize, why do I need to wait until I make a mistake to direct my focus? What if I just directed my focus towards the next opportunity every time? Because catch this. What you focus on, you're going to feel. And what you focus on, you're going to get more of. How many of you have ever seen a person who makes a mistake and that mistake compounds into more mistakes? That mistake haunts them for the rest of the day, the rest of their week, the rest of their life. What you focus on, you're going to feel. What you focus on, you're going to get more of. So along that same line of thinking, I have an 80-20 rule. 80% of my time is focused on potential solutions. Only 10 to 20% of my time am I going to focus on problems. Because I want to focus on solutions, to create more solutions, to make me feel better. Because when I'm in a better mood, the likelihood of me doing something positive is much greater. So, how many of you have heard of the phrase cognitive dissonance? Okay. So, cognitive dissonance basically is when you experience something that's different from what you believe is supposed to happen, and then you get pulled in one direction or the other. The way Dr. James Richards put this in his book, How to Stop the Pain, and I believe there's going to be a slide that pops up to illustrate this, so we might momentarily rise above or sink beneath our heart's beliefs, but eventually equilibrium is going to set in, and we're going to fall in line with exactly where we believe that we are supposed to be. That's why I talk to kids all the time, and I tell them results don't matter. I get a lot of parents that don't like that. It's the beliefs of your heart that matter. You can experience something up there, get a temporary result that's higher than your heart's beliefs. You can get one that's beneath it. But over time, it's going to weigh itself out. You're going to pull it together, and you're going to fall in line with exactly where you believe you're supposed to be. So how do we raise our heart's beliefs? With affirmations.